Thank you for tuning in to Why Live. The purpose of this show is to connect the dots between what someone does in their business with their underlying why. Where does the motivation come from, and what makes the individual the absolute best at what they do? Our guest today is Dr. Elsbeth Meuth, visionary, intimacy, and relationship expert. Dr. Elsbeth Meuth has assisted thousands of women to create lasting intimacy and fulfillment in their lives and relationships. She's featured on Showtime's documentary series Sexual Healing and the Emmy Award-winning NBC show Starting Over. Best-selling author of Sexual Enlightenment, endorsed by world-renowned spiritual pioneer Dr. Michael Beckwith, and the co-founder of TantraNova Institute in Chicago. She has coached billionaires, innovators, and power couples all over the world, shared her intimacy secrets at a global YPO Young Presidents Organization conference in the City of Love, Paris, and got nominated as Changemaker at the White House-sponsored 2016 United States of Women Summit in Washington, D.C.
Thank you for the conversation, Dan. And what I have been doing for the last 20 years now almost is teaching love and intimacy skills to couples and singles. You know, globally, people come to us from all corners of the world. And what I call learning how to create lasting intimacy and love, something none of us has learned, yet many of us long for. And I've been doing this with my husband and business partner, and now expanding the mission into really making a difference in the woman-men relationship worldwide. So I will share a little bit more about that in a moment.
So the first thing that pops into my head is, I think a lot of people feel this way too, is like the different chapters, I guess, that you go through with a relationship with a loved one. And, you know, there's sometimes a lot of confusion between, you know, love and lust, and, you know, is there like a little bit of a secret sauce to being able to cultivate a long relationship that can go through all these different phases?
Yeah, that's really great, that question, because how I actually came into what I'm doing, have been doing for a while now, really grew out of a great desperation, not knowing how to create lasting intimacy and love.
Mm.
And in the process, I applied myself to learning meditation, to studying meditation and the practice of Tantra yoga. And what I, discovered there was that I tried to get love through sex. And I was very good at that. I was good at falling in love. And however, I was not able to sustain love. And it has something to do with a disconnect or not making a distinction between emotional intimacy that I locate in the heart area and sexual intimacy that I locate in the sexual center. However, it's like for us in our experience, it all blurs. And so we don't know, am I coming from my heart or from my sex? Or, men seem to, when they want to connect, they're more coming from their sexual center. It has to do with testosterone energy. And women, or the one who is more tapped into their feminine, could be a man as well, they start feeling when they want to connect in the heart center. And to bridge that disconnect or that confusion, that is a big part of the work, and it's not resolved intellectually.
Huh.
Because transformation only happens through experience, not through understanding.
Interesting. So as an analytical person, I'm looking at, when I'm feeling something, should I analyze and say, is this coming from my head, or is this coming from my heart, or which chakra is it coming from? But what you're saying is that it's more of a connectivity of a sense of feeling, that you approach a other individual or relationship, right?
Yeah, think of yourself. You know, when you want to connect with your wife, where do you start feeling it?
Heart, like around the chest area, around the radiancy, like right above the stomach, I would say.
Yes. Now you are such a heart guy, like a heart guy. You know, when you want to have sex with her, where do you start feel? When you feel, you know, like it's coming on and you want to be with her.
There's a flame in my sexuality,
Yeah.
and the heat that kind of boils, right?
Yes. And that is what often, you know, so many couples come to us with that conflict. It's a kind of a conflict, you know, that he loves her, he wants to be with her and express this in his sexual self. And she loves him, she wants to be with him. However, the locus from which they start feeling wanting to connect intimately in that sexual intimate
It's
self,
different, right?
he starts feeling it in its sexual center, so
Yeah,
it comes from there. She feels it from her heart center, so we are like two ships passing in the night.
yeah,
So in the tantric practice, actually, the man learns how to channel up his wonderful life force, sexual testosterone energy into his heart. First and foremost for himself, because when he is integrated in himself, he becomes actually more available to himself and then more present to the beloved. And for the woman, when she is connected from, like in her heart, from his heart, her heart opens and then her sexual center opens. It's like a circuit from the men's sexual center up into his heart to her heart, in her to her sexual center, and then we have a circuit. Everything in life is circular. You know, like energy
yeah.
is circular, never disappears, it just shows up in different forms.
So I think within the last 2 minutes, you demystified the words tantra, and I think it was so beautiful the way you put it. Makes people want to think a little bit more about it. So I have to ask, what led you into this work, and and I'm asking maybe earlier on, like when's the first time like you discovered that you had a draw towards a deeper understanding of sexuality and the conflict between men and women, patriarchy and whatnot. Can you share with us a little bit about your why, essentially?
Yeah, you know, Dan, I feel I came with it into this world. Like when I was an infant, felt very connected with my dad. Actually, I was in love with my dad. And I felt he was in love with me too. However, he didn't express it in the way I wanted to feel it and be getting
Hmm.
it. So he was emotionally not so evolved. So pretty much his emotional state was either anger, fury, or withdrawal. You know, those were the two stages. And now I can see this. As an infant, I was just all feeling. And so I started living into a world, literally into worlds, like my inner world of feeling, and then the outer world where there was such a conflict. So in a sense, that had started for me early on. And of course, I didn't see that until my adulthood. Um, and then in my teenage years, I become sexually, you know, very curious and started to date a boy who became my first love when I was 16 years old. I got curious about women. You know, it was always a mystique for me around women, also sexually.
Mhm.
And were times in my life I lived with a woman for 8 years in a monogamous relationship when I still was living in Germany. So it was always part of my expression, of my exploration. And what I said earlier, I easily fell in love. You know, I was easily infatuated and it felt great. And on the other side, there was a lot of suffering because it often didn't get fulfilled in the way I wanted it to be fulfilled, just like when I was an infant. And then how I kept further creating this was by attracting unavailable men. Throughout my life, that has been a theme. And then I got just very, very despaired in, around 50, 49, 50 years old. And I really saw the writing on the wall. If I was not going to make a fundamental shift, and I didn't know how to, but I knew unless I would end up with leaving this planet without ever having experienced lasting intimacy and love. Emphasis on lasting.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that is when I delved into meditation and the practice of Tantra. And that really shifted my whole being. I consider it like it really assisted me in reintegrating myself. I had done a lot of work on my mind through my doctoral studies and being a management consultant. And I had done work on my emotions, so in-depth work with a coach. However, the sexual dimension, I never had approached in a conscious way to really become aware of myself consciously. And again, this is not a cerebral thing in the tantric practice. It is actually a tapping into it in the flow of experience that for me opened up or reminded me of great wounds from this first love I mentioned earlier. It was when I had intercourse for the first time with him, and it was so painful. I had to go to the gynecologist, and then the bill from the gynecologist went to my home. My dad opened it, and all hell broke loose. Shortly after, the boyfriend left, and I felt so alone. There was no single soul I could turn to. And that was the time when I not only started to armor myself, of course, that's an unconscious reaction, it's a coping, and made that nanosecond decision. See, men are never there for you when you need them. And no wonder that I attracted unavailability, because I kept proving to myself over and over again, see, they're not available. They are not there when you need them.
So this understanding, wow, I mean, you're opening up like a whole new understanding of sexuality. And, it's not just with intimate lovers. I think, at least for me, sexuality, attraction, and that energy is in everyday conversations, is in everyday actions. Share with us a little bit about your bigger vision and how this deeper understanding can potentially, shift the way people interact, and maybe even the way the world works.
Yeah, let me build it up here, coming from my own experience to really, like, unless we clear our wounding around our sexual self, and we may not be even aware of it, that there's wounding. It's a collective wounding that happens or has happened in our individual history. Not everybody got sexually abused. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not get, explicitly sexually abused, but the way how I felt humiliated by my dad after I had intercourse, he called me a whore. It was all sinful and bad. And it really attacked me, or I felt attacked in the very essence of being a woman, And so, and that is connected to our sexual self, which is the sexual energy is life force energy. You and I, we wouldn't be sitting here if it hadn't been for that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And this energy in our culture, and I mean the world culture, for millennia has been vilified in some, religious teachings, made sinful, bad. Your penis is going to be cut off if you masturbate. Don't go there until you're married. And then whose energy is it? You know, it's always has always been my energy. By clearing out the wounds for some, for all of us, clearing the shame, guilt, fear, and embarrassment that actually comes with that energy, culturally speaking. And so this is why we have, you know, sex trade, this sexual harassment, the Me Too movement that brought this out very, you know, explosively. Um, so we cannot just gloss over our sexual unconsciousness any longer because, as you said, it lives everywhere, both in the negative expression of it, you know, of, of course, also then in the positive expression. Like for me, setting my sexual energy free, you know, from the past allowed me to access it as a creative energy. Like for me, the TantraNova, that is the institute, we, you know, our business, really is an outflow of having set free that creative energy. And then because it all coincided, I did the clearing, I met my beloved, who is now my husband, and we decided within a couple of months that we would pull our resources and create TantraNova. And that what we teach itself is all about creating and creation. And that is the source of creation energy, you know, and it comes with two ingredients, that life force sexual energy, with pleasure and creativity. And that's set free. And that is really my mission, to bring this further to the world so that we can clear what convolutes that energy and start tapping into the energy and channeling the energy both within, and by the way, this is a really great practice to extend orgasms, to have orgasmic waves for hours, and to also channel that energy into the third eye and imbue our projects, our intentions into realization.
So why, you know, you mentioned how society has treated sex and sexuality as taboo and not going there. Why do you think that is?
Oh, so this is a very powerful energy. And we are all wired for it to keep procreating. Look at animals. We are at some level, we are the same. What distinguishes us from animals is that we have a conscious mind. We have language. We have the capacity to consider the past, the present, and the future. Without language, that's not possible. So, like, you know, this example I often give is like there are a bull and a cow, and they are, you know, in heat, and they mate, and then it's over. And then the cow doesn't sit back with a cigarette in her hand and says, wow, that was a really great fuck. There is no assessment about what just happened.
Mm.
This is why they don't live in the same kind of suffering that we have, because we as human beings say, you know, how was it right after? How was it for you? Last time it was better, you know, or wow, that was phenomenal. We are immediately in assessment that takes us out of the experience, takes us out of the body, because the beauty of an orgasm is that for a few seconds, we are not in our head. We cannot think while we experience orgasm. That is why it's so attractive. Finally, I can just be, you know, that's the experience. So how could we bring this more into ourselves, into our relationship, more consciously, so that I can actually generate this, that I'm in my body and feel my pleasure without assessing it while I'm doing it, or then right afterwards.
So I know we've spoken previously, but there's one thing that I'd love for you to share with the audience, and you know, maybe you can share a couple pointers on human mastery and the distinctions of human mastery. Can you share a couple of points that you've come up with?
Yes, given that I have been working with relationship and intimacy and love for the last 20 years, both within myself, very intentionally in my beloved relationship, and with thousands of couples and singles around the world, is that what is like the missing link? And while I have been preparing and learning and teaching, there something happened through the Me Too movement where I felt called into bringing this consciousness, to a much broader audience for the sake of transformation of humankind. And so I call it human relationship mastery, that calls for two key shifts that we want to learn about. One is to shift out of a hierarchical relational model like patriarchy or matriarchy. And we have lived in a patriarchal model for many, many millennia actually on this planet. And the thing is that in a patriarchal or hierarchical model, there's one up and one is down, and the one who is up lacks the capacity to listen for what is there, because there's no need, because the power is located here.
Right.
And you can see this in the Me Too movement, where men woke up and say, what? We cannot continue the way we are with women. And I'm not saying every man has been with women like that, but enough of a mass of women, of men. So now also I want to clearly say this is not just something for men to become more conscious, because it's equally there for women, because in these at least 2 millennia of patriarchal relational condition, the women have been part of it, of that consciousness or that context. How come that women couldn't vote until 100 years ago? Even what came up around Me Too, how come we tolerated this for so long? But the thing is that when we live in a certain consciousness, we all live in that consciousness. It's not like, why didn't you wake up earlier? No, women were part of that consciousness. So what we want to shift to is into a horizontal relationship model, and like the infinity flow, where there is the yin and yang, feminine, masculine, and that is not gender-based and shows also up in genders. That, like, given that I'm estrogen-based, I consider myself more feminine and yin, although I can be just as much in my masculine, like in the business context or when I want to get something done. The point is that we come into balance within. The same is true for men. And then in relationship, be it an intimate relationship or business relationship or world leader relationship, that we learn to, at certain moments, be leading, and the other one is following. And then the other one is leading, and the first one is following. And you can see this calls for certain skills that are not being developed in the hierarchical model. And the skills have to do with that we are equally capable of listening, truly listening, being present and speaking. So yin is the listening, yang is the speaking. If I cannot speak my truth, if I cannot speak up, or if I'm the one who always speaks, I don't listen. Receiving, giving, following, leading, they are all part of the same family, of the same dynamic. And that is where a different way of connecting, of co-creation is available. Coupled with bringing consciousness to our sexual self, that life force self, so that this is no longer obscured, connected with literally our consciousness self, the third eye, the crown center, where the pineal and the pituitary reside, that actually allow us to be in our conscious self and them, integrating them instead of being either very prone to be in our sexual self, which is earth bound, or always in our upper self, which is heaven bound. We are never really here, integrated that we are meant to be. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these polarities. So, coming into the infinity loop through the horizontal relational model, coupled with the awareness of our sexual self, integrated with our consciousness self. So my consciousness affects my sexual self, and my sexual self imbues my consciousness. And from there, then creating relationship.
So let's go back to the infinity flow. I think there's a beautiful takeaway here for people that are watching that maybe they can implement immediately. So when you talk about the infinity flow, it's not necessarily when you're having a conversation with somebody else, knowing where you stand and knowing where they stand. Obviously, that's very important. That's part of it. But what I heard also is internally, right, inside of you, to understand what energy source is leading and what energy source is part of that flow. So can you maybe share an example? Let's say, as a man, there's conflict and somebody isn't happy, or my first reaction is testosterone and let's get in their face, right? Can you maybe share a little bit how that infinity flow can be a tool that one can use to become better at communications?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question here is, conflict. How do we resolve conflict? And we are not resolving conflict by power, force versus force.
Mm-hmm.
If I keep pushing like this against each other, I stay stagnant. Like it's a physics law. However, if I yield, we start dancing together.
Mm.
That doesn't mean I give myself up. However, I'm open to listen, to speak, to dance with each other. And the center point for that is really the heart center. Because the heart center, where love and compassion resides in terms of emotions, unless I drop into that heart space, I cannot listen to you then. When I'm angry, my stomach gets tight and I am right and you are wrong. And you don't see the world as I see it. And I may be even in, a slight survival mode or whatever may get triggered from my animal instinct. And so too, the whole question is about why we call it human relationship mastery is how can I learn to master my emotions, to master my sexual self, to master my thoughts and interpretations instead of them mastering me? Because then I'm a total victim to my emotions, to my sex, and, to my shadow mind.
So I want to pause you real quick. That the motion that you just did with your hand, I think is something that at least for me, I can visualize. Like next time there's conflict, I'm gonna definitely visualize what you did with your hands there. That was so powerful in terms of illustrating what that can look like. And just for the record, it's not being allowing somebody to step over you, right? It's really kind of understanding the flow of the relationship and how you can literally dance with somebody. So thank you so much for that. That was a beautiful illustration.
Actually, then
Yeah.
it takes a lot of strength, power within, if one shifts from this to this, that is where power resides. There's a book called by David Hawkins, Power versus Force.
Mm.
And the force we apply in the world doesn't resolve conflict, politically, as culturally, socially, you know. So it's a dead end. And that is power. Now, I don't just go all the way, you know.
Right.
It is like there's a presence. I stay present. And what often happens is by this move, the one who's here, not necessarily shocked, but deeply surprised. There's something happening in their nervous system because of the unexpectedness.
Right.
Like this, you know. And there may be times when this person on this side may not be open at all, may not want to open. And then it's actually good to give it a pause.
Right. Beautiful. So beautiful. So one quick question for you. And you know, we talk about gifts at the proof, and we talk about, you know, really standing for our gift for humanity, and within each one of us we have a beautiful purpose, we have a beautiful gift. And I always like to ask, what does a world look like if everyone adopted your gift? So I just want to say, like just look at our world, look at the politics, look at, you know, the people that are leading countries, down to, you know, an interaction at a grocery store or a homeless person on the street. Like, if we all were able to come from a space of, you know, not hierarchy, as you said, but this flow, wow, the world would be so different. Oh my goodness. And it's all within us.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you're bridging it with sexuality. You know, it's something that it's such a taboo thing people don't talk about. And I think that's part of the problem, is that, you know, we don't want to relate to that. But once we open up to that, then the creation and the understanding, the acknowledgement is so powerful.
Mm-hmm. So the possibility I see is that that there's greater harmony and peace amongst each other in all relationships, and then also particularly in beloved relationships, or even in dating, or, you know, could show up in many places. And of course also how leaders lead our countries, that we can truly co-create. Because this is what it's all about. We are not going to shift our problems in the world unless we start listening to each other, so that these phenomenal ideas and, you know, what is inside of us already can come out further, and then putting them together. I'm not saying that there is a lot of coordination and co-creation happening in the world. It's not like, you know, however, there is also a lot of suffering and a lot of conflict. And, you know, from my point of view, why do we have so many divorces and separation?
Yeah.
You know, so it's all connected or visible. And so what I see possible is this harmony and peace for co-creation and resolving our issues together.
So last question, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, but if you were allowed to put up a billboard right now on a big interstate on the road, what would it say?
World problems to be solved, to be transformed through listening and developing relationship capacities that are fueled by sexual consciousness. It's a little bit too long for a billboard, but something about the shift will lie in relationship consciousness and through sexual awareness.
It is a little bit long, but I think you will cause a couple of car accidents on the interstate when people realize that sexuality is part of the conversation,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's
And why not? Because the accidents already happened
right.
to the women in the Me Too movement, you
Right,
know? So it's already, we're already aware of it. So why not naming it now?
right,
And not only naming it, but really doing something about it.
sure.
There's
So
one, I
yeah,
also want to say that through the work with you and Stacy and through the proof, for me, the mission that I am sharing here really got further connected to why I've been wanting to do this in the first place through tapping into my why with you.
mm,
Bring it out in like this crystal that you assisted me in articulating it in.
mm.
And so I just also want to say thank you so much. And whoever, listens to this conversation, you may want to consider to contact Dan and Stacy to get your why further out to, you know, propel your mission, your purpose forward in the world. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher or, uh, you know, a corporate manager.
Thank you so much for that, Elspeth. And for me, it's like everything one needs is within oneself, and we all have these beautiful gems within ourselves, and the beauty lies within. So thank you so much for that. So just to kind of wrap up real quick, if people want to learn a little bit more about your work, or learn a little bit more about your theories on human mastery, where can they go?
At this moment, because we are in the process of developing the webpage for that particular, part of our work, for now you can go to tantranova.com, TANTRANOVA, tantranova like supernova, .com. You can find me as well as my husband there and the work we have been doing. And then, contact me at Elsbeth at TantraNova.com. Look forward to
Beautiful.
it.
Great. TantraNova.com. Got it. Wonderful. Elsbeth, thank you so much for your time and your inspiration and the work that you do on the world, and look forward to further conversations. Thank you.
Thank you too, Dan, for your leadership.